Hello and welcome to Cameron King of the World Special Edition. In this first chapter of many chapters, I'm sure, we have a lot of Avatar movies to go, many years before we get there. But the moments, the years, the months, the weeks, the hours, the minutes, and the seconds have ticked away, and we are a month away, less than a month away from the release of Avatar: The Way of Water, the first James Cameron film in 13 years, and a sequel to the 2009 original classic. Yeah, no, I mean, I can already, I can already feel people throwing things at their computer screens. No, Avatar 2009. I've talked about it in depth in the previous series, Cameron King of the World, regular edition, except no substitutes. And now as we begin this new special edition, the sister series to that original video, and original series of videos, I should say. If you haven't checked out the introduction, go check that out because I talk about what you can expect in this series, what this series is. But in this one, I want to talk about returning to Pandora, journeying back to Pandora, because in September of this year, 2022, I went back to the cinema and I watched Avatar again. I want to talk about it before we get to Way of Water. Let's talk about the original first. Now, again, I reviewed the film on my channel before. I reviewed it again in depth for Cameron King of the World. I did like an hour-long video about the making of the film and the whole story of the film getting made. Talked about it enough, but seeing it again on the big screen is a whole different experience. So I want to talk half about seeing it on the big screen again, but also half about my frustrations of this new remaster of the film, because it is a new version of the film. So when the film came out in 2009, we had that version, the theatrical release version. 2010, it was re-released in cinemas as a special edition version with some new footage. And then when the Blu-ray came out, we had the extended collector's edition version, which has about 17 minutes of extra footage altogether. So 3 versions of the film, 4 if you count the family-friendly version of the film with the swears cut down and changed. I never watched it. I'm assuming they just kind of changed. I don't know. It's like, when you see someone say the F word in a film, and in the TV version it's freak. One of my favorites is from Blue Velvet with Dennis Hopper. Let's freak! I'll freak anything that moves! Which, I wouldn't shout at full volume with my microphone in front of me. It would destroy your eardrums, but... Let's freak! I'll freak anything that moves! There's lots of great ones. One of my favorites is actually Cousin Vinny, where he's like, well, that's bull stuff. Bull stuff. Or even Back to the Future. When this baby hits the 88 miles per hour, you're going to see some serious stuff. Doesn't quite have the same oomph to it, Or even Adventures in Babysitting. Don't mess with the baby, sir. Kind of kills the line. Anyway, so there's kind of 3 cuts of the film. A 4th family-friendly version. But now there's a 5th version. I guess we're calling it the 2022 remastered version, because there's 1 line of dialogue that has been added to the film, which I was very surprised by. But at the very end of the movie, when all is kind of the Na'vi have prevailed, and it seems like the humans are being shipped off world, and Jake's there, they've got their guns, and the humans are kind of like, yes sir, kind of off they go. And the character, Giovanni Ribisi plays Selfridge, I think. He kind of just looks over at Jake and that's it in the movie. But in the 2022 version, he actually walks up to him and says something to the effect of, this isn't the end of this, which is very kind of tying into the sequel. It's kind of a weird way to do it, where you re-release a film you made 13 years ago and you add in 1 line to make people more interested in the sequel, I guess. I don't know. Either way, that's a difference to the version that was released in September 2022. So it was announced that Cameron had gone back and he'd remastered Avatar in 4K in high frame rate and in HDR. And he'd done the same with Titanic, which I think we're going to see next year in 2023. I'm intrigued by that. Well, maybe I'm not, and we'll talk about why in this video. So, yeah, I wanted to go see it in the cinema again. I was intrigued by the 4K remaster kind of promise. I wasn't even sure if Avatar had been made it had been finished in 2K back in 2009 or not. Wasn't sure if 4K was really going to show more detail or anything, and I guess the proof will be in the pudding whenever they release it on 4K Blu-ray, which hopefully they'll surely do. And I wonder if that 4K Blu-ray will be the 2022 edition only, or it'll be the theatrical version only, 2009, or the 2010. I'd like to see all versions of it done in that style, but I think they're probably just going to do the theatrical cut anyway. It's fine. The Blu-rays look great. So, for me, it was just like, okay, because I'd heard that with The Way of Water, the new Avatar film, Cameron was using high frame rate. And I was like, oh no, please don't tell me he's doing the high frame rate stuff for The Way of Water. Because I saw The Hobbit in high frame rate and it was atrocious. It made all that beautiful production design look like shit, and you just looked like you're watching Neighbors, Home and Away or something. EastEnders, and it didn't feel cinematic at all. So when I heard Cameron was doing that Way of Water, I thought, oh my God. But then I heard that he's using it in select sequences. And the belief is that it'll be the underwater sequences in the film, which will be done in high frame rate, and it'll transition into that to give a smoother feel for some of the 3D effects. And I kind of like the idea of that. And I'm wondering, because that stuff underwater will be purely animation, it's not going to feel like a soap opera, because it's not going to be, it's not real footage. So I'm actually really intrigued to see how that looks. And the best way to see how that looks is to go and see the Avatar re-release. Obviously, this is high frame rate that's done in post, so it's not going to look the same as The Way of Water, but I was still intrigued to go see it. So I got myself ready in September to go and check it out. And it was funny how they very quietly, well, not quietly because everyone talked about it. But they very kind of just brushed under the carpet that they removed Avatar from Disney Plus. They've only just put it back on there now a couple of days ago in December. Not December. We're nearing the end of November. Well, as I'm filming this, you'll see this video in December. But regardless, it was 2 months. Avatar was gone from Disney Plus, and I checked it straight away because there was a rumor that perhaps they were going to re-upload the 4K version of the 2022 cut of Avatar on Disney Plus. They did not do that, so that was interesting. Anyway, so I was like, okay, I'm going to go see it in September. It's going to come out, and I wanted to see it in a high frame rate. And I thought, well, are they going to even specify? I just assumed it would be shown like that in every cinema. But then I realized, okay, do I need to look this up? I was looking up on the Odeon website, nothing about it. Cineworld website, nothing about it. And then people started watching it, and they're saying, wow, the high frame rate stuff was really interesting and much better than The Hobbit. And I'm like, okay, where did you see that? And where was it stated that it was high frame rate? And I couldn't get many answers. I even emailed Cineworld, got nothing from them. Odeon didn't reply to me for weeks, far beyond the time in which I'd already gone and seen the film. But what I eventually gathered and gleaned was that there's only a few cinemas in the country that can show high frame rate with Avatar. And I think it's to do with the fact that it's the DCP, the digital cinema package or presentation. I forget the digital cinema package, I think. Not sure if it's presentation or not. Anyway, I'm not up with all the lingo, but I've heard of DCPs for a long time, and it's basically the package, the digital package that a film is given, it is sent off to the cinemas, because there's no film reels anymore for the most part. In terms of general wide commercial kind of cinemas and screenings and stuff. So the DCP of Avatar is like 4K, HDR and all that stuff, but a lot of cinemas aren't capable of showing that. So then I guess there's DCPs which are just 2K or whatever, and not in 3D. And so then I heard that they're going to show a scene from The Way of Water at the end of the film as a post-credit scene. Okay, that's interesting. Then I heard that there's different scenes with different versions of the film. So there's like one for the 2D version of the film, a different scene for the 3D version, a different scene for the 4K HDR high frame rate version. So I was like, okay, there's so much stuff going on. But for me, what it all boiled down to was that the closest place I could find that showed it in high frame rate was some city down in the south of England, which was closer, I think, than London, but it just was more difficult to get to. Birmingham, their Cineworld was showing it, and it said on their website high frame rate. But the closest, well, the most convenient for me would have been London, and it just wasn't viable from a time perspective. I would have paid the money to get a coach up there and check it out. But there's a cinema in Leicester Square, I think called an Odeon Lux or the Odeon Deluxe. It's like an underground cinema, and it's a pretty new state-of-the-art screening room, which is kind of small actually, unfortunately, but it has a 4K dual laser projection. I think that's how you get the super high quality stuff. So when Way of Water comes out, I do want to try and go to that cinema to watch it, because I'm not going to get to see Way of Water in high frame rate when it first comes out, but maybe next year, January, I'd like to go just to see how that stuff looks. I trust Cameron, and I really want to see how he dealt with it. And I read that he talked about how the problem for them in transitioning from 24 frames per second to presumably 48 frames per second in the high frame rate scenes is that, you can't really have a film that has a variable frame rate, um, for whatever technical reason that is. And so what they did for the 24 frame stuff is they just doubled the frames. So it should look nice and cinematic and as we know films to look. And then the high frame rate stuff will kind of smoothly transition, hopefully. So I'm really intrigued about that aspect, but I didn't get to really see that with this re-release, unfortunately. Anyway, so the day comes, I go to see it with a friend of mine, and we got there a bit late, so I didn't. It bugs me I didn't see the whole film, but yeah, it's like I've seen the film loads. We got in just as Jake is kind of meeting Quaritch and the kind of military meeting at the beginning on Pandora. So I really only missed maybe a couple of minutes at the beginning of the film.
But all right.
And now I'm seeing a film on an IMAX screen in 3D, and it's the screen that I saw Avatar in 13 years ago with Connie, the first film we ever saw in the cinema together, so it's kind of special to me in that sense. And it was weird seeing a film in 3D. It's been a long time. I think the last time I saw a film in 3D was Avengers Endgame in the 4DX screening, which was, I could make a whole video about that experience. But this is like the first, it's been a long time since I've seen one on a big screen with 3D. And it was kind of good. You move your head to the left or the right, up and down, and the subtitles kind of just, motion blow the hell out of you. You got to really be focused on the center of the screen. And we sat fairly dead center in the middle. You really need to with 3D films. The glasses, which were very light, were kind of hurting my nose, the bridge of my nose for some reason. So there was, there's still uncomfortable parts of seeing a 3D film. I don't love 3D, but what I really enjoy about it when it works for me, 3D, is not the stuff that's gimmicky and it gets thrown in your face and wow. It's just the spatial depth when you can actually perceive, like you almost feel like you're in the room, kind of. That's the best stuff. It's almost like scenes with people in small kind of rooms is the most impressive 3D stuff because I feel like I'm in that you can feel the depth, And in some of those big vistas in Avatar, you kind of forget what you're looking at 3D, I think. So, it wasn't like I was like, oh my God, this changes everything. But it was cool to see it in 3D again, on a big screen again, and just to remember how fucking good of a film it is. I really, really do love the film. And I've talked about that in the past, so this isn't a review of the movie, just my thoughts on the screening itself. Yeah, and just seeing details I hadn't seen before, because when you're watching it on a big screen, you kind of look around a bit more and stuff, and I just loved soaking it in, and I really, really enjoyed it. I love going back to that film and seeing it in the cinema again. And then at the end, of course, we had the scene from The Way of Water, which I couldn't concentrate on because the movie ends and then it just says like, and now preview what's to come in December. Okay, cool. And suddenly we're in like the ocean, right? And it's like, oh my, it just looks gorgeous, right? On a big screen. Oh. And then all these people in the front row got up and just started having a conversation, and they're like, they stood by the screen. Like the IMAX screen is like not wall, is floor to ceiling, and they stood at the bottom by the screen, and they're like, yeah. So we're gonna go out here, and then do you want to come with? Well, if you stay, we'll do that, and then just go through all that. And I'm just like, the film is still on. Like it wasn't like there was 5 minutes of credits and then this happened. It was boom straight away right into it. And I'm just like, there's still stuff going on. Like, A, why aren't you turning around to watch it? And B, why are you hanging around? Just leave. Fucking get out. So I had one eye on, a teenage Sigourney Weaver Na'vi kind of marveling at these fish, and it looked fucking incredible. And the other eye is looking down at these people who just won't fucking leave the cinema. That was frustrating for me, unfortunately. But what I saw of it, like, the jump was noticeable from the first film. I mean, the first film holds up magnificently for what it is. It really does. There's bits here and there where you can kind of tell the dated CGI, but for the most part, fuck, it holds up so well visually. As a film, it holds up. But seeing this scene when it was I forget his character's name, Kiri. I don't know. I remembered it when I made that video all those years ago, 2 years ago. I talked about the characters of Avatar 2 before had been given an official title. We knew about the names of the children of Jake and Neytiri in the sequel. But Sigourney Weaver plays this young teenage girl who is an adopted daughter of Jake and Neytiri, and we see her kind of in the ocean, kind of fascinated by these fish. And we see the other young Na'vi kind of, they're trying, some of them can't swim as well. And they're kind of jostling back and forth about that. And they're like, oh, where is she? And we cut down and she's still there just mesmerized by the ocean and these and it's a beautiful scene. I'm just looking forward to seeing that scene again on the big screen like that, and knowing, and that was another thing for me, was knowing they were showing a scene from The Way of Water and knowing that I wasn't going to get to see it in high frame rate. I wanted to see if it still looked really good on the big screen, and it really did. So I'm really happy that hopefully my experience of seeing The Way of Water will be a really great one visually for the first time on December 16th, if I manage to get to see it on the opening night, which I really hope I do. So that was it. I really enjoyed going back to Pandora in this sense, and I think it was a smart thing monetarily to release the film in cinemas again. It did very well. It made a lot of money, made some more millions to that massive final gross, which is never final now because they keep bloody re-releasing it. I don't agree with that, by the way. I really don't agree with them counting re-release runs as part of the film's overall gross. I don't think that's right. I think that then you just get into a dick measuring competition because, oh no, look, it's longer. That was a really bad analogy. I apologize, but it really is just like, who cares? Like, re-release it, sure. Reintroduce people to the film who haven't seen it in so long, sure. Put it in cinemas again for people who weren't even born when the first film came out to see it on the big screen, sure. Re-release it so that we get a nice big screen experience before the sequel, sure. But to say, we got another 30 million to the final gross, like, fuck off with that shit. Like, it doesn't matter, and it's pointless, I think. Anyway, with that said, next time we'll talk about the trailers of The Way of Water and what I think about how it looks and where the story is potentially going, and then the third video in this series, Chapter 3, will be my first thoughts on the movie. So we're getting there. It's close. It's crept up on me like a motherfucker. I thought, like, I've got months to make these videos and talk about, it's been 2 months now since I saw Avatar in the cinema. So yeah, there's probably more I could have talked about if I really thought about it in certain moments and things, but I really missed the special edition scenes, or the collector's special edition scenes, the added backstory of Grace and the school, and particularly, what's his name? Tuktere, I think? I don't know. No, I think that's one of the children in the new movie. No, it's Suk something. This is where people say, see, you can't name the characters in Avatar because it's not a memorable movie. No, the guy who was primed to be the kind of Neytiri's wife and the leader of the clan moving forward in the film, who, very predictably hates Jake at the beginning and then considers him a brother by the end of the film. But you just see him fall off the ship after a heroic action, and then we never see him again. But in the collector's extended edition version, we see Jake there with him as he dies, very much a Aragorn Boromir moment, you're my brother, and all that kind of stuff. And I miss those scenes, so I almost wish it had been the extended version, but it still works fine in the theatrical release version too. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.